President Trump addressed the nation last night with an update on the war in Iran. Take a listen.
Tonight, Iran's Navy is gone. Their Air Force is in ruins. Their leaders, most of them, terrorist regime they led, are now dead. Their command and control of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is being decimated as we speak. Their ability to launch missiles and drones is dramatically curtailed, and their weapons, factories, and rocket launchers are being blown to pieces. Very few of them left. Never in the history of warfare has an enemy suffered such clear and devastating large-scale losses in a matter of weeks.
Well, joining us now with his reaction to the president's speech, Khansaronia, Chief of Staff to the Crown Prince of Iran, joining us this morning. Cameron, thank you for your time today.
Good to be with you, Shelley. Thank you for having me.
So much to talk about. Let's start with your response to what the president said last night. Is the Islamic regime military really gone? And if it is, how are they still attacking U.S. targets and neighboring countries?
Oh, well, it has been significantly decimated. It's been significant to see the regime's ballistic missile capacity decimated and its abilities for offensive warfare significantly limited as well. Of course, you're continuing to see, despite that, the regime attacking neighboring countries, because that's what this regime has done for 47 years. Even in the face of such significant setbacks, it doesn't use its remaining resources to support or help the Iranian people. It uses it to attack its neighbors. It uses it to try to kill innocent civilians, to drag other countries into the war. This is what the Islamic Republic has done now for more than 47 years. So this shouldn't be a point of surprise. It's what it's done this entire time.
Okay, let's talk about something that may be a point of surprise. The president last night said that the regime has changed and that the new regime, more reasonable people. The president claims this new regime wanted a ceasefire. Iran denies it. And as many have seen from these protests that started with the Iranian people back in January, millions of people in the diaspora, they've been calling for the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, to lead them through this transition. So many are asking, who is the president talking to as this new regime?
Well, it's important to recognize that this really is not a new regime. The three heads of the branches of the Islamic Republic's government are still in place. The president, the head of the parliament, Mr. Ghalibaf, the head of the judiciary is apparently still in place. And so really the remnants of the Islamic Republic are still in charge. Ali Khamenei is dead, but Khamenei Jr. has now taken his place. So this regime is not more moderate than it used to be. The president is clearly seeking a diplomatic solution, and he's right to do so. In almost all cases, it's better to find diplomatic solutions than military ones. The problem is that with the Islamic Republic, you don't find a good faith partner on the other end of the negotiating table. What you find is a partner, if you could even call it that, who's looking to buy time, to cheat, to steal, and to kill. And the Islamic Republic has done that for 47 years, and the people of Iran, as you said, will not accept some rump version of the Islamic Republic, whether it's Mr. Ghalibaf or Mr. Rouhani or whomever. Just like they went into the streets and chanted death to Khamenei, they will go into the streets again and chant death to Ghalibaf, death to Rouhani, because all of these people are part and parcel of a regime that has tortured, killed, jailed, and humiliated the people of Iran for 47 years. And the only name that they've called, the only name that has legitimacy on the ground in the country, whose name was chanted in each of Iran's 31 provinces, is that of Prince Reza Pahlavi. And so the president clearly is looking to make a deal. That's entirely understandable. The problem is the people he's looking to make a deal with don't want to make a deal because they don't act in Iran's national interest. They don't act rationally. They act in the interest of a terrorist ideology that is holding a nation hostage.
Last night, the president laid out the timeline, Cameron, for when he said the war would be over. Take a listen.
I've made clear from the beginning of Operation Epic Fury that we will continue until our objectives are fully achieved. Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages.
bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. I know there's some concern when people heard that, saying, well, what happens to the Iranian people who just wanted the government gone?
Well, it's sad that we're at this place. Iran is a civilization of 2,500 years that invented, in many cases, things that the world enjoys today: poetry, mathematics, wine, so many things. Iran is the source of its people and its leaders brought into existence human rights, the very concept of it. And now we have to hear Iran talked about like this on the international stage. And that's because the Islamic Republic has dragged us here with its warmongering, with its terrorism, with its proxies, with its slaughter, as the president said, of 45,000 innocent protesters by murdering American soldiers. The regime in Iran has brought us here. Now, what we hope is that the president, as his administration consistently has, distinguishes between the people of Iran and the regime in Iran. And what needs to be decimated is the regime's repressive capacity, its political leadership that are holding Iranians hostage. The regime has been the one that has tried to drag Iran into the Stone Ages by treating women like second-class citizens, by treating women, minorities, and frankly all Iranians as if not even the Dark Ages, but the Stone Ages. And so what has to be the target is the regime that has held Iran hostage, that is slaughtering its people, that is waging war on America. And the president of the United States and the people of the United States of America will find no better partners for peace, for prosperity, for stability than the people of Iran themselves. And they're represented not by this clerical regime, but by their 2,500-year-old civilization and by Prince Reza Pahlavi, who looks to bring Iran to the days once again where it stands for peace, for brotherhood, for cooperation, not for terrorism and hostage taking that this regime represents.
Cameron, you and I have spoken over the years about Iran and the future, and you and I both know very well there's many people that are very critical about what's happening. Many Americans are saying that this is not a war that the United States should have gotten involved with. What would you say to that?
What I would say is think about your children, think about your grandchildren, think about whether you want them, like us, like you, to live under constant fear of terrorist attack, under constant fear of hostage taking, under constant threat that American troops will be killed at some base in the Middle East, under constant fear that Americans will be held hostage, under constant fear that some concert venue will be blown up by terrorists sponsored, paid for, and supported by the Islamic Republic. This is a campaign that should have been waged long ago. It didn't have to get to this point. We could have solved this problem a long time ago had we simply supported the people of Iran in their campaign against this regime. So the people of Iran are not only fighting for themselves. The messages that we get from them inside the country is we're not just fighting against our occupiers and our oppressors. We're fighting for the people of the world who the Islamic Republic is also waging war on. So the president highlighted last night that this campaign has only gone on for about 33 days. If the United States can end the 47-year dictatorship of this regime that has held Iran hostage and held the world hostage, then it'll be well worth it. But we have to support the people of Iran to finish the job, to take back their country, to return it to the rail of progress and prosperity where it belongs. And the people of Iran are ready to do that. They proved in January when they sacrificed 45,000 of their bravest, youngest soldiers, just young people on the streets fighting for freedom, that they're willing to sacrifice for freedom. We just need to stand with them and support them in their efforts.
Cameron, Khansaronia, always good to have you here. Thank you.